It's another beautiful day. As I do this today out in my front yard, you're going to hear all kinds of noises, I think. There are children outside playing, there are people moving about, doing things, knowing that this is probably going to be one of the last really nice days. I'm going to read from Ecclesiastes today. Ecclesiastes is kind of a depressing book in a lot of ways, but not this section. This section that was turned into a song back in the 60s. It's time for some scripture today. And this is from the Today's English version, if it doesn't sound exactly like what you remember. Everything that happens in this world happens at the time that God chooses. He sets the time for birth and the time for death, the time for planting and the time for pulling up, the time for killing and the time for healing, the time for tearing down and the time for building. He sets the time for sorrow and the time for joy, the time for mourning and the time for dancing, the time for making love and the time for not making love, the time for kissing and the time for not kissing. He sets the time for finding and the time for losing, the time for saving and the time for throwing away, the time for tearing and the time for mending, the time for silence and the time for talk. He sets the time for love and the time for hate, the time for war, and the time for peace. As Pete Seeger said, to everything, turn, turn. Enjoy this day. Be patient. Stay safe. And be well.